Welcome to RakaCodes. If you want to become a skilled Android or Kotlin developer, you are into the right place because in this series we will learn Kotlin from absolute basics to advanced and concepts, and with real world examples, coding challenges, interview questions, and hands-on projects too, right? So whether you are a complete beginner or a Flutter developer or any other mobile framework like React Native developer, switching to native Android, or someone preparing for placement and jobs, so this is designed for you. So grab your laptop, open your IDE, and let's write our first line of code, Kotlin code together. But before that, we will learn some basics introduction, like the theoretical things first, because in interview, if you are on a beginner level, these things are also asked, right? So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Okay, so in this our first episode of introduction to Kotlin, we will start with the latest Kotlin 2.4.0, which is recently released on June 3rd, 2026, right? So what is Kotlin, right? The first thing that comes to your mind, right? So Kotlin is developed by JetBrains, and it is designed to solve the common hurdles that developers face in legacy Java code bases, because we already know that Java was the primary language used for mobile application development in the earlier stages, right? So with the Kotlin, it made safety, simplicity, performance, interoperability, performance, and conciseness all in one that comes with the Kotlin, right? So suppose we will take a basic example for a safety. So in Java, we uh, came across null pointer exceptions many often, right? So there are high chances that in the production or in the runtime, your app may crash because of a null pointer exception. Basically, this is like if you get a null data when you are fetching some data from the API, or some value didn't get calculated, right? But Kotlin has a built-in null safety, right? So Java is a lot more of boilerplate code. If we take a simple example, that suppose we have to write a class, right? So we have to write it getters, setters, and constructors too. But in the Kotlin, we just have to write a data class, which we'll also see in the upcoming videos, and also an example in the next 2 to 3 slides. And as discussed, I was prone to null pointer exceptions, but Kotlin has built-in null safety that we make sure either it is going to be null, so Kotlin handles it, and we make it null via providing a question mark, or we make Kotlin ensure that it is not going to be null via the bang operator, that is the double exclamation mark, right? And Kotlin has concise and expressive syntax, while whether Java as repetitive and more boilerplate code. And Kotlin is also 100% Java interoperable. So suppose if you have a Java based app and you need to switch to Kotlin, so you don't have to write the app from a scratch in Kotlin, right? You just make a file of the Kotlin and you can start working with that. Okay. So, and now we'll see a brief history about the Kotlin, because interviewers sometimes also ask this, right? So, Kotlin was announced by JetBrains in 2011 with the promise of like Java 100% interoperability, modern syntax, safe programming, fast compilation, and that they made sure, and also a easy learning curve, right? So, for beginners, Java is a difficult to learn, right? And instead of replacing Java, Kotlin was designed to work together with Java, as the name term as interoperability. And in between 2012 to 2015, the open source of the development of the Kotlin began, and its community started growing, and many companies accepted Kotlin. right? And JetBrains continuously improved this language, and finally the time came in 2016. The first stable version was released. So interviewers also asked this, like when it was announced or when the first stable version was released. And then there was a turning point. The Google raised its official support for Android to the Kotlin, right? So I'm saying that Kotlin will now be an officially supported language for Android development, and this changed everything. Before 2017, the whole applications were the native applications for mobile were in Java only for Android specifically. But after 2017, Java was also there, but Kotlin became the official. And then in Google announced the Kotlin First policy, means any new Android APIs or like anything that is going to be designed will be designed for Kotlin first. Means the Kotlin support should be there, and documentation will also prioritize Kotlin rather than Java. Samples will use Kotlin. JetBrains libraries will target Kotlin. This accelerated Kotlin adoption across. And then here comes the 2026, the Kotlin 2.4.0 era, which we will learn, right? Okay, so let's move further. Okay. And in the recent year, the K2 compiler has also arrived. So what is the K2 compiler? Okay, and we will also see why the changing point in the K2 compiler. So before the K2 compiler, the older compiler was slower and harder to maintain, and also like a bottleneck in large projects, because in large projects the build was very very slow. And also what it does, if you have an application having 10 or 20 modules, right? So the compiler, the old compiler, or we can say the legacy compiler, used to compile all the modules, even though code analysis for the modern era. So it also of any error, it builds faster, it compiles faster, because it uses incremental option, right? So what is incremental build we'll see in detail in the next videos, but for your information as of now, I will tell, suppose you have 10 or 20 modules, you have worked on only single one module, you haven't touched other modules. So whenever you are building or compiling the code, the K2 compiler their code has been changed, right? It won't touch other things, right? Okay. So why K2 matters, as we have seen, the faster compilation, better errors, and contextual diagnostics means giving the pinpoint issues precisely. Type inference means, suppose I'll let you see. We define numbers that is less than teaser. We haven't defined anything, just define your using file. We only use the file in the way. From we are just equal to right. So if I numbers, that is a list of integers, the compiler will immediately infer it as a list of integer, right? So isn't it smart? Okay. So, and also the smart typecasting. So suppose if I use not a string, suppose it's a character, it's always one, so it will like always give it as a result of one, right? So we can also check that too, like if a value is a string, integer, right? Let's move further. After the Kotlin K2 compiler, the JetBrains announced its KMP, right? So what is Campy? It's Kotlin multi-platform. As the name suggests, you just have to write the code once, which runs everywhere. In the Kotlin multi-platform, you just share your business logic across Android, iOS, desktop, and web without duplicating the code in the Swift or JavaScript. Swift is a language, as some of or most of you may know, that is used for iOS application, right? Swift or Objective C. So you don't have to write the code again in these languages, right? So it has a unified logic layer, platform, and so if we talk about the web, so what is does it that it compiles Kotlin into JavaScript. So Kotlin is compiled into JavaScript, and that is sent to the browser, which is useful for front-end web development. There is also Kotlin Wasp, which is one of the Kotlin's newest target. What it does is converts the Kotlin code into WebAssembly, and then it renders it on the browser. So advantage of Wasm is the near native speed it provides on the web also, and better performance than JavaScript for many workloads, right? So it's also a future ready web application. And Kotlin 2.4.0 has been already released in 2026, right? And if you're looking for a career in it, it has a broader ecosystem, because the JVM and backend JVM is like Linux and right. So you can go with the backend also, like it's using Spring Boot or Ket or framework for the Kotlin. And this is also the number one language for the Android, and using KMP you can write the cross platform applications also, and web and native speed. And if you're looking for a career opportunities in Kotlin, so you can be a developer as companies like Google, PhonePe, Swiggy, Zomato, Uber, Netflix, and much more are using already using this, right? And they're also KMP or platform independent. You can also go for a backend development like frameworks like Spring Boot and Ket, as I already mentioned. These are useful for REST APIs, microservices, enterprise software also. If CPU is not your issue, and you want the performance that is unmatched, you can go with this, right? You can also be a KMP developer, right? Or you can go with the data engineering and automation, because Kotlin is increasingly used and server-side analytics also, right? And this is especially in JVM also. So today, and that's something that we will see, like why did JetBrains create Kotlin instead of sticking with Java? Like interviewer may also ask this, and what's the significance